Welcome everybody. All right, let's take a look at how we can go and add in functions to this small little program to make it easier. Now, functions serve a purpose in programming, and in Swift, they mostly serve the purpose to divide up code. So imagine if you were a story writer and you had 20 pages of your short story and you didn't use any paragraphs at all. It was just one wall of text. It would be very hard to read. Well, in coding, it's the same thing. If you just had 20 pages of code and there was kind of no rhyme or reason to how it was organized, or there wasn't really any spaces, it would be very hard to read. And of course, hard code that's hard to read, it takes a lot longer to upload to the App Store because you have to debug your code, and the easier your code is to read, the faster you will be able to debug it. So functions serve the purpose of dividing up code. So let's say I were to go and add in a function to this here. So as you can see, I have a little bit of code here. And I know this is a small example, but imagine if you had 10 times the amount of code on how much this would make your life easier. So we'll say add in a function. So in order to declare a function, you type in FNUC, abbreviation for function, and we'll say add double. And we add in two brackets and a curly bracket. And this function here is within the curly brackets here, just like that. That is the function add double. So nothing really changes to this code except I've added in a function here, and I can call this function whenever I want. All right, I'm going to get to calling function in just a second here, but let me add in a couple more. We'll say some float. All right, and we'll say, actually we'll call this add float, like that. All right, and here we go. And what we can do here is this function. It looks like we're printing arrays, so we'll call this print arrays. Now notice how I name these functions to be something that makes sense. The function isn't something like this. This would be a bad example of what you need to do. You don't want to name your functions anything like this because you don't know what it does. We know what functions print arrays does. It prints the arrays. Now notice nothing got outputted to the side here, and the reason is that you have to be able to call a function. So a function is a way to divide up code, but it also is, you have to call it when you need it. So if I want to call the function add double, I type in add double, and you can see that it says it's a type void and it adds a double here. Okay, and then once that happens here, it will call that function, and you can see that it adds in the double there. Like I said, if I want to do add float, it will call that function. Functions are, they remain not called until you call them. They remain unused until you call them. And then we'll also say print arrays. Okay, and then you can see here that we now have the print arrays, and it will call that code. Now, if I get rid of these two, these functions are never called, and thus the code is never executed within that. Okay, so this is the easiest way to think of functions, is that it's a way to separate code and to make your code easy to understand.